Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words. Today we are playing Painter. Now Painter is kind of split off into two major different groups. So you have the blue Painter and then the classic red Painter, which is what we're playing today. So the aim of the game with Painter is to assemble Painter Servant, which makes all the cards in your opponent's deck and on the stack and in play the same colour. And then Grindstone, which mills two cards from their deck, and if they're the same colour, it does it again. So this plus Painter will mill their entire deck. And that is our main win condition. But we can also play like a fair value game. We've got things like Urza Saga to pump out constructs. We've got Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is just a great value piece that can dig us to our combo or can get us some nice card advantage by copying our creatures and getting all that sort of good stuff going. We've got Phyrexian Dragon Engine, which we can then loop in and out with things like Goblin Engineer and Goblin Welder, so just keep that going. And then we have Karn, which can win on its own just by fetching up a Mycosynth Lattice and just shutting the game off. There's also this Chaos Defiler, which we can weld in and out with Welder, and that could do some pretty disgusting things to our opponent's board. Because we're running Painter, we get to run a 1-mana Vindicate / Counterspell at instant speed. So Pyroblast, when everything is blue, is just great times for us. And there are a lot of blue decks in Legacy, so it sometimes is just great on its own anyway. We've got a couple of Blood Moons because they don't tread on our toes since they changed the rules of Sagas. So the Urza Saga can just be permanently on chapter number 2. We play the Blood Moon and we just crank out constructs, which is pretty cool. We've got a couple of Saga targets in Pithing Needle and Saga Lantern, aside from obviously the Grindstone here and the Lotus Petals. We've also got a one-of Arena of Glory, so we can get a hasty Goblin Engineer and activate it immediately, which sometimes comes up and wins you games. Sideboard-wise, we've got some removal in the Fury. We've also got Chainsaw, which is one I haven't seen very often. So this is a 2-mana. When it enters, it deals 3 damage up to one target creature. Whenever one or more creatures die, we put a counter on this, and we can equip this to something, and it gets +X + 0, where X is the number of counters on it. So this can just make our goblins into slightly better threats, whilst also being a piece of removal. This is something that we can tutor for with the Karn, if we just need to blow up a creature. This is something we can tutor for with Karn if we need to blow up an artifact. So this is a new card. In the Spider-Man set, this is Steel Wrecking Ball, but online, due to licensing issues, it's Temple Trap. So this is basically, we tutor for this with the Karn, and then we can pay to discard this card to destroy target artifact. This will blow up a Null Rod, because we're not activating an artifact, we're discarding to activate the ability of an artifact card in our hand, which is different in terms of how Null Rod works, so we get to use this to blow up a Null Rod. We've also got a Tormos Crypt here, Liquimetal Coating, Void Mirror is an interesting one. This is really good against the colourless Mystic Forge deck. We can just counter all their colourless spells. Pretty good stuff. Another Ensnaring Bridge, so we've got one in the main, one in the board. Damping Sphere for Storm decks, Disruptor Flute, just all the stuff you'd expect really. There's a lot of play to this deck. For a long time, I was always in awe of all the people who used to play Painter all the time, because back in the day they were doing all this cool stuff with Imperial Recruiters and Lions Eye Diamonds. Things have changed since then, but the deck has still got a lot of interesting play to it and decisions. So like, subscribe, try and help me hit 6k subscribers by the end of the year, please. That'd be lovely. And let's start painting. If you are looking to buy some Magic cards, not only does 3for1 Trading have a wonderful online store linked in the description of this video, but they will also have booths at upcoming events. MagicCon Atlanta from the 26th to 28th of September, Eternal Weekend Pittsburgh from the 9th to the 12th of October, and Spiel 25 in Essen from the 23rd to the 26th of October. Whether you're looking to sell off cards you don't need or add more to your collection, 3for1 Trading has got you covered. Right, we've got a pretty serviceable opener here. We can get the Goblin Welder, which will certainly attract some ire from our opponent, no doubt. If our opponent starts assembling a bunch of guys, we can Ensnaring Bridge. If our opponent's doing combo stuff, then they're probably going to go underneath us anyway. We'd like an Ancient Tomb, so we can ram this Fable the Mirror Breaker in next turn. That would be the ideal. Oh, we've got a Painter Mirror. Now, our opponent's almost certainly going to be more experienced with the Painter Mirror than I am, but we'll see how we fare here. So, playing out the Painter is, like, super sketchy here. Okay. We are just fine here then. We just cast this Goblin Engineer and the game ends. Because this searches for any artifact card. We played our artifact land specifically for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to get this Chaos Defiler into our graveyard. And then we're going to turn our Great Furnace into a Chaos Defiler and blow up their Welder. And then we can do that every turn. So our opponent doesn't get to have permanents anymore, really. Well, non-land permanents. Because we can sacrifice this to the Engineer to bring back the Great Furnace. Then we can sacrifice the Furnace to the Welder to blow up whatever they play. And we can just do this and beat them down for 5 every turn. Ensnaring Bridge. Okay. Another Welder. That's interesting. Sacrifice this. Blow up this. Get this back. And then we can deploy another Welder here. And we can hold it up. If our opponent plays anything, we can just at the Defiler and blow it up. Our opponent is very much in trouble here. We have 1 to 2 Vindicates every turn cycle. Well, they're not quite Vindicates because we can't hit lands. They're more like Maelstrom Pulses, I guess. In terms of things they're going to have for graveyard hate. They probably have the main deck Soul Guide Lantern like we do. I doubt they have much more than that, but it's certainly possible they could be running some other stuff. Some more stompy builds of Painter do have other options, like I've seen Unlicensed Hearse. There's a Goblin Engineer, so this can go and get something, but then we can blow up the Engineer. This doesn't have haste, so we don't have to worry about anything coming back right now. Phyrexian Dragon Engine, okay. So if they have a Saga Lantern, they can target this, okay. So when this enters, exile target card from the graveyard. So we wait for the target to go on the stack, and then if we welder this now, no, that was a mistake actually, wasn't it? Because now they exile this. I've made a horrible mistake here. So our opponent now cracks the Soul Guide Lantern. So now we're not going to have our Phyrexian Defiler anymore. Yeah, that was just a mistake. We just threw this one away. There's a Saga. Let's play this out. I did say that we would be worse at this than our opponent, and here we are. So let's get this Fable, the Mirror Breaker ticking. We just pass it over. Now we can use Welders to mess with our opponent's stuff as well. This is not just our things, it's target artifact. A player controls and target artifact in their graveyard, so we can hit their stuff. We've got the win in a couple of turns. Sure, so Urza Saga's not going to pop here. They've got Magus of the Moons in their list. Let's get rid of this, and I don't think we need another Welder at this point. Another Ensnaring Bridge. Not really what I wanted. We cannot play out the Painter because our opponent immediately wins the game if that happens. What we can do here is we can attack with our Goblin Shaman token and generate a little bit more artifact goodness for us to mess around with. Do we play this one out just to have more artifact stuff in play? I think so. It just gives us more things to manipulate with our welders. Now, I think we're still odds on to win this game, but the play with the Defiler was definitely a mistake. Because obviously we'd find another artifact at some point, but we'd still be left with this 5-4 in play. Alright, they have a Welder. That's a little bit spooky. So on the next turn we can start flipping this around and doing cool stuff. Let's come in with this Goblin Shaman token. Place Ancient Tomb. And I guess we passed. So next turn we can copy our Goblin Engineer using our Reflection of Kiki-Jiki. Playing out the Painter's Servant is an interesting choice here. Does this mean they've got Color Source plus Red Blast available? City of Traitors. It's blue. So we can force them to use their fast mana on what we're about to do. Let's have our own Painter. Also named blue. Why not? And then we'll try and copy this Goblin Engineer. Because we've got the Simian Spirit Guide plus Red Blast here. They can tag our Engineer. We can get the Grindstone here. And we turn this Great Furnace into a Grindstone. But we have more Welders than our opponent. We want to use the Welders first because you have to sacrifice as a cost for the Engineer. The Welder shouldn't be enough to stop what we're doing here. Now they can try and Welder back in this Soul Guide Lantern. So targeting this, so then we can just Welder over the top here. They don't have the mana for the other guy. So turn this into the Grindstone. We've still got a couple of Engineer activations to go over the top. So we can Grindstone our opponent out. Alright, we did make a little bit of a misstep. Although the problem is, we could have been left with a 5-4 in play that would have taken out one of their guys, which is obviously better than what we did. But then we'd still have the ability to never use our graveyard again because of the Soul Guide Lanterns. We'd have to bait that out later. But we managed to get through because we drew more goblins. I would like some Furies, please. I think this is a matchup where we're trying to go down on some of these sorts of things. We're not trying to be like a painter. We're not trying to be the one playing the Painter, because if we play the Painter, it's really bad. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can think about taking out here. Chainsaw, do I want this in the main or do I want this in the sideboard? I think I want this in the main. Like, if we're taking all of this stuff out, that's a lot, isn't it? We can take out these we can put in these Disruptor Flutes if we want to. And then, I'm not sure if we're supposed to keep these Pyroblasts in or not. Because our opponent's just not going to name... I guess they might want to have their Pyroblast working as a thing. It's a really awkward situation here. So we can keep in a second Grindstone, maybe. And then, the problem with Disruptor Flute is it does hit our stuff as well. Which isn't ideal. So maybe we're supposed to just have, like, something along these lines. Maybe have a Faerie Macabre, just a little bit extra graveyard hate to mess... They look like they had lots of Welders, so maybe we want more graveyard hate like this. We'll try this out. Like I said, I'm not as experienced in the Painter Mirror as Painter players are. I enjoy the deck a lot, but there's so much play to it, and I really don't have the reps compared to the dedicated Painter players, because the people who play Painter tend to be very dedicated deck specialists. There's a lot of good players out there. Okay, so we have the same hand as last time. Let's see if we can do it without messing up. Alright, There is an Urza Saga and a Lotus Petal. So we can start off with Welder. So if they crack this Lotus Petal, any artifact they put into play, I can swap for a Lotus Petal on their side, which is an awkward situation for them to be in. But next turn, we can just do the Chaos Defiler nonsense again, provided our creature lives. If our opponent has a way of removing this, I expect they're going to. They might not be running Karn, which is one of our trump cards in the matchup. And there it is. Here is the Engineer. Let's go and get the Chaos Defiler. Would you like to make a creature at the end step there, opponent? Alright, let's go get our Defiler back and blow up this construct token. Have they brought in Faerie Macabres? Right, so you choose the thing that dies on resolution with the Chaos Defiler. It's not targeting, it's just choose as it resolves. So we'll blow up the construct token. Next turn we can play out the Fable if we wish. We can play out the Karn as well. But I suspect something's going to get Pithing Needle this turn. No, well, we'll see. They're not making a construct, that makes sense. They're getting a Grindstone. Have they just baited us in and they have the mana to just pop us off this turn? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. This is a little bit spooky. What is our solution to this one? We don't have the mana that we need. So they're going to see how we sideboarded here. Just trying to think if there's a way through this one. So in our upkeep, we can get something back. So if we get back the Grindstone, we don't have like an LED to get back and pop them. So what we need to do here would be mill our opponent and then put their Phyrexian Dragon Engine into play. But we don't have the ability to do that. We have just shown them how we've boarded. But I think that's probably not going to come as a surprise to them. They saw the Karns, which is possibly annoying there for us. Maybe do want another Red Blast in here if our opponent's going to be angling us that way. This is one of the big trump cards in the matchup, but our hand is very, very slow. We can just play like a slow Saga game. I think we need to do something a little bit more impressive. This isn't the one deck. Let's try again. Okay, we're back to a similar hand that we're at before. But we can keep this one. I think we've been off the... I think we get rid of the Mountain and the Faerie Macabre. Because the Arena is going to come in untapped like a Mountain anyway. Our opponent's not going to interfere with our lands. Let's just get this Soulguide Lantern in so our opponent can't mess around with graveyard stuff. They can mess with our graveyard because this is each opponent rather than target player. Here's a Saga. Okay, so we have a turn 3 Karn, which should hopefully do a lot here. My beloved Chaos Defiler. Let's play this Arena of Glory and pass. Are they going to have an Ancient Tomb here? Start cranking out the boys? Or is this, we're tutoring for Painter and we're going to get you that way? Like, it could be both, which is a little scary. I think we are getting the Karn in right now. And what we're going to do is we're going to plus it, targeting our Soulguide Lantern, so we've just got a little bit more defense for our Karn for a turn cycle. And then we can go and fish up an Ensnaring Bridge, sit behind the bridge, and just win the game that way. So our opponent's probably going to get a Pithing Needle for our Karn, which is the one downside here. But that means they're not getting one of their combo pieces. Maybe we're supposed to have taken this to get us a card. Let's see what our opponent goes for here. Now, they might not have the Pithing Needle because they don't want a Pithing Needle in the mirror match because they don't want to name their own stuff. But if they have a Pithing Needle on Karn, they did see the Karn when we milled over. Okay, so do just have the Pithing Needle. Yep. That's a bit of a punish for us there. We could have turned this into another card. Now, we can blow this up, but it's not the easiest thing in the world for us. We need a Lotus Petal, please. Lotus Petal off the top is our best draw. Is this coming at us or is this coming at Karn still? It's still coming at Karn, so it's saving us some life. I will take the damage on the Karn there. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. This gives us some pretty handy treasure tokens that allow us to cast this Chaos Defiler next turn. I'm a big fan of that. I don't want to play this Mat out and lose our City of Traitors yet. We might be drawing a card from a Soulguide Lantern, but it kind of feels a bit scary to do that when our opponent's ticking up towards a combo piece, and then a Welder can obviously get them the second combo piece. So we could have preemptively gone and got the Temple Trap with the Karn, but then our Karn dies. Right, so making bigger boys. How many things are we sending at Karn here? Both at Karn. Sure. So Karn actually ended up saving us a boatload of life here. That's pretty good. So I think I want to crack the Soulguide Lantern to have more cards to manipulate with our Fable, even though our opponent can do some graveyard stuff. They're not showing that yet. They didn't play a Welder this turn. And there's a Saga of our very own. Interesting. A Pithing Needle. We're getting rid of here. Probably Pithing Needle and Mountain. I think I'm going to attack with my Goblin Shaman token. I kind of want to hold this for when we actually need to blow something up, if that makes sense. Because we're going to blank these using our Ensnaring Bridges. But I really want the mana from this treasure token still. So I think we go 1, 2, 3, play out the Ensnaring Bridge. Don't play out the Saga. We lose our City of Traitors. But next turn we can play the Mountain and still have enough mana to play this Chaos Defiler. We can try and hit something that we care about. So I'd like to blow up this Pithing Needle and draw another one of our Karns. That's probably our best way of winning the game. There's an argument that we shouldn't have played out the Karn, but we'd be on a lot lower life total now. Although we could still stabilize behind an Ensnaring Bridge, but this way if our opponent manages to blow up our Ensnaring Bridge, we're not immediately dead. There's definitely other avenues we had this game. Like we could have just Karn, got an Ensnaring Bridge and tried to sit on that as well. If they're making another construct, that's kind of sketchy for us, because this means they have lethal at any point the Ensnaring Bridge goes away. Now we can play a Chaos Defiler, blow one of these up, then we can block one in combat which kills it, which then the trigger goes and it kills another one. So this can take out 3 of our opponent's constructs. Do we need to do that though? That is the real question. Lotus Petal from our opponent. They're 7/7s now. We still take out 3. We got a Braid here. It just kills a stone, dead, right? Yeah, so they do this, they bash us for 21. Yeah, that was tough. Our opponent has a Braids and things. We don't really have those in our list, which is a little bit awkward. And we didn't draw like the Furies in a way that was meaningful. Yeah, a bit of a tough one. I expected we'd probably lose the mirror because most people that play Painter Online are dedicated Painter players and know what they're doing more than I do. On to round 2. It's kind of slow, to be honest. But if they're playing a blue deck, then the Pyroblast is obviously going to help. Can we just sit there and play as a Saga game? This does seem very slow compared to a lot of the things in the format. We do have some interactive tools that we might be able to leverage. I'm going to try it for science. That's kind of one of my reservations about Karn in the Painter decks, is the mana value of it's quite high, and we already have a bunch of really situational cards in our deck. So we could go Saga on 1 and just work towards like Saga Lantern or Grindstone. But I think we're better off just cracking in with this Mountain, potentially Pyroblasting something. So a Tameo is a classic turn 1 play at the moment, and it's one of the best things you can do in the format. Volcanic Fissure. Okay. Chrome Mox. I don't think this Pyroblast is going to get a lot of purchase here. If our opponent goes for a 1 ring, we can shut that down with Pithing Needle or the Karn. Alright. What's happening here? A Blood Moon. Okay. They've spent a lot of resources on a Blood Moon against our mono red deck. You got it, boss. So there's no real point playing the Saga right now. I think we just play this one out. I could play out this Pithing Needle naming Broadside Bombardiers, but I think we don't need to do that yet. Next turn we can play the Karn and shut down the 1 ring and this Chrome Mox, and then our opponent has a bad time. Oh wow, well they just all in on Blood Moon. Alright, we'll play a Mountain, we'll play a Lotus Petal, we'll play a Karn, and our opponent might scoop the game up. Blow up the Chrome Mox. Keep this nice and healthy so it's not going to die to like Fury or anything. And next turn we can go and get whatever we fancy here. Lots of Pyroblast. So our opponent may have like kind of gone all on this Blood Moon, but we do have 3 blanks in our hand. Let's minus the Karn. I think we just want to get the Liquimetal Coating here and just be that guy. Before you ask, we don't have a Painter in the sideboard to go with the Karn. So in our opponent's upkeep, we can Liquimetal Coating this Mountain so it doesn't produce mana. So it's kind of like Rishadan porting them. And they've not been doing anything on 2 mana, so they're only going to have 2 mana this turn as well. And then next turn we just start blowing up their permanents using Liquimetal Coating and Karn. We can blow up all their lands because it becomes an artifact, and then we can turn it into a creature using Karn, and it'll be a 0/0 because it's got mana value 0. If you're unfamiliar with how that works. Alright, our opponent's just scooping it up there, and I don't blame them. Yeah, that was not the time to go in on the Blood Moon, their opponent, but they didn't know that. We want Fury so we can blow up things like Broadside Bombardiers. We don't need Faerie Macabres. We don't need this Saga Lantern. The Pithing Needle, again, things like the 1 ring, things like the Broadside Bombardiers are both things I would very much like to not have to mess around with. What else is not so useful in our deck here? The Blood Moons. They can get right out. So this gives us one more thing that we can bring in from this selection. Would I like some removal that we can fetch with a Karn, or I want some removal that can just be in our deck to try and help us get towards Karn. I could also bring in a Disruptor Flute, again, for the One Ring and Broadside Bombardiers. That's an option. Temple Trap is a nice card that we can reach for with the Karn. I don't think we want this in the main deck at all. So I think we're either bringing in a Disruptor Flute or a Chainsaw. Are we really bringing in... I think most of the time the Ensnaring Bridge is going to do a lot of the work that a Chainsaw would do. So I think we're just going to have a Chainsaw in the main. Just a little bit of extra removal. It kind of gets us up to the Karn instead of needing the Karn to get removal. I think that's the wrong way to play it because then we have to try and survive till Karn comes into play. Ensnaring Bridge is going to help us against our opponent's beatdown plan. This can find us a Grindstone so we can combo from behind. We can also play a turn 2 Fable Mirror Breaker, which is very strong. We can do turn 2 Fable the same time we do the Saga, so we can just start cranking out constructs as well, and we can be a pretty powerful mid-rangey beatdown deck at that point. And then randomly pivot into combo if the time works out for us. And we can just cower behind our Ensnaring Bridge until our opponent casts Fiery Confluence and blows up all our permanents. I think we should be pretty solid in this matchup. That's my not so hot take. Alright, let's play a Mountain. Next turn we go Saga, Pitch Spirit Guide, make the Fable. So depending on what our opponent does this turn, we might end up in a pretty solid position. Are they going to do a Fable as well? No. A Pyrogoyf. That is a 0-1 Pyrogoyf. What are we doing here, opponent? I don't understand that at all. So let's go for... There's a Saga. I think we are just doing the Fable. I think it's the most powerful play we have available to us right now. It also helps us get cards out of our hand for the purposes of getting this Ensnaring Bridge if our opponent does manage to make their creature bigger. Why do they spend all their resources on a 0-1 Pyrogoyf? Like, do they have a way of putting more stuff in their graveyard and then playing another Pyrogoyf and they just wanted to have, like, double triggers on it? I still don't think that makes sense. They feel they just really need to get something that could pressure in, and, like, their other cards are, like, Furies and things. Our opponent might be new to playing the deck, so might be new to playing Legacy, we just don't know. But I can't really fathom why this came into play when it did. Now, I myself am not immune to making play mistakes, so it's certainly feasible that other people can make them too. Right, they're using Dead to blow up my poor little defenseless Shaman. Now they get to get in for 1 damage. I'm going to bin off a couple of lands, I think. So I don't think we want to play the Karn here. I'm going to play this out. Are we just making a construct? It will be the biggest thing on the board, right? 1, 2, 3. Or are we just playing out a couple of engineer type cards so we can win the game next turn? So if we go for the making constructs, that gets blown out by Fiery Confluence. If we make the Welder and the engineer, that also gets blown out by Fiery Confluence. So would I rather try and win the game next turn? So if we play both of these out, then we just have the win next turn. Probably fine. I don't necessarily think we have to eke as much value out of this Saga as we can. But it does put us... Like, if our opponent's spending resources to deal with our construct tokens, that's resources going into this thing that's just going to do its thing anyway. Okay, I think we're just going to do some Saga gaming. Try and get the most out of our resources when our opponent is spending, like, 2-for-1s. We're not really under a great amount of pressure. So, like, they pitched a Spirit Guide to get this creature in, which didn't do anything. So, they're already behind on resources. So, if we can just continue this trend, that'd be good. So, this can threaten a Pithing Needle to stop our combo. That is important to note. We're going to see here Fable. Alright, they're blowing up our land. I'm glad we didn't go in for the combo route then. Make a guy. This is going to put a sorcery. Yes, I will use the ability. Let's get a mountain. So now they have a 4-5. So we're not blocking that. Okay, that Sudden Eruption was pretty good. We were rewarded for the play we took though, which is always nice. A Pyroblast. This is going to flip. So what are we doing here? I don't think Karn is the way forward. We could turtle up behind this. So we can play 2 cards out. That gives us 3 cards in hand, so this won't be able to attack. Alright, I think we attack with a construct. I think we can afford to take this damage though. So I reckon we're just going to play out our goblins this turn. There we go. Goblin Engineer. We can win next turn using Reflection of Kiki-Jiki nonsense, I'm pretty sure. Let's get the Painter's Servant, I think. Because then that enables our Pyroblast. Play out the Welder here. And then next turn, we can copy the Engineer. We just need 1 mana to be able to go off then. Because Welder puts the thing in for free. We just need 1 mana for this. So we're 1 mana away from combo before our opponent has a Saga pops. We're going to see a Pyroglyph here. 5 mana. This is a Fury. Okay. We're going to lose our goblins. They can take out 2 of our creatures. They have to choose which 2 they want to take out, though. They'd probably just take out the Welder and the Engineer. I think that's probably the strongest thing they can do. Now, the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki is pretty good. Okay, so they're putting 1 damage on this guy as well. That makes sense. They have damage to throw around. Okay, so we're going to be sitting behind Ensnaring Bridge mode quite soon. The thing about Pyroblast that's important to note is you can tap Pyroblast. You can cast Pyroblast on any target. It just does the effect if the target is that color. So you can get this out of your hand, which is why it's better than Red Elemental Blast for us. The old Pyroglyph's pretty large, isn't it? If we find a mana source, we can just sit behind our Ensnaring Bridge for a little bit. So we can force them to lose their construct here. I would really like to find a land, please, deck. So we can copy the construct, attack them for 8, so they have to chump block with the Fury. That puts them to 4. Then we can just go shields up with the Ensnaring Bridge if we want to. This Pyroblast kind of burning a hole in our pocket, but I think we have to have the Pyroblast in. We don't have a bunch of Abrades and stuff to bring in, so this is kind of our artifact destruction, which is going to be kind of important for some of the things our opponent can do. And like when we just have 1 mana Vindicate, it's very good. Okay, not quite what we wanted here. So we can play the Engineer, we can copy it, and have a Hasty Engineer. What can the Hasty Engineer do for us? It can get the... We can go and get Chaos Defiler and just blow up this Pyroglyph. That's not too bad. It does cost us a Lotus Petal, but I think that's a worthy cause. So we get the Chaos Defiler here. Actually, no, we can't bring the Chaos Defiler back, can we? Because this is not Welder. We have to get something else here. Or I messed this turn up. So we can go and get the Chainsaw. That kills the Fury. We chump block the Pyroglyph. If we get Painter here, we can put it in, but we don't have the mana to use it. I think we should have played the Ensnaring Bridge. Now we can go and get an Ensnaring Bridge and bring that back. But then we have 3 cards in hand, so we're going to have to sacrifice something for it. If they have another Pyroglyph, we don't have a way of beating that. So I think I just get the Chainsaw here, and then we just blow up the Fury. So this is going to do Pithing Needle things. I don't really want to deal with Pithing Needle things. So we're going to do this in this. So we're going to copy this guy now. The reason we're doing it this way is so that they can't interact with our Engineer that we're trying to tag. This gives us a blocker for next turn as well. So this will put a Grindstone into our graveyard, I think. And then we can block and we can get the Chainsaw in a minute, but they can just go get a Pithing Needle, so we probably have to get the Chainsaw now, don't we? We get the Chainsaw, we kill the Fury. We probably have to chump block with the Construct token this turn. Make sure our life total is high enough not to die to random stuff. But yeah, if they go get Pithing Needle and put it on Goblin Engineer, that's obviously pretty good. Doesn't look like I floated mana from this. Alright, they've just scooped it up. There were some pretty questionable plays on the other side of the battlefield. I think our opponent might be relatively new to playing the deck. There was definitely some clunky stuff there, but you see me play decks where I have no idea what I'm doing as well, so you can't blame opponents for that. Alright, let's go to round number 3. I think we're pretty good in this matchup, by the way. This is an interesting one. I think this covers us against some of the scary things that exist. This covers us against some aggressive starts our opponents could have. And then this gives us pressure against a control deck. So we have various useful levers here, but how useful they are will depend on a lot of factors. Misty Rainforest. Is this Nardu? Is this Cephalid Breakfast? Is this Blue Black Reanimator? I genuinely don't know. Okay, given the fact that we could go Welder into the Chaos Defiler, I think it's correct to play the Welder here. Because if we find any artifacts, we can just put anything we want in. So we're going to have the ability to manipulate our deck here. So whatever we're worried about, we can hopefully stop. This allows us to play a turn 2 Ensnaring Bridge, potentially. Now, this does hinge on us finding an artifact we can play. Narcomoeba. Okay, so we are on Cephalid Breakfast. So we're probably just playing out the Soulguide Lantern next turn. Would like to find an artifact. I think playing to the high roll of being able to do this Engineer-Welder combo is pretty good. And if our opponent was Breakfast, there's no way they could combo on turn 2 unless they had their one-off Lotus Petal they sometimes run. Okay. So we take 1 from the Narcomoeba. Puts us back down to 20. What option are we going for this turn? Fable of the Mirror Breaker. I do like that. Are we racing to do something with our Saga? I don't think so. I think this is... I guess we could use this first one just as a tutor. I don't hate that. We don't have to make constructs all the time. Now we can obviously switch into construct mode if we think that's going to be better than the engineer. There's also a matchup where our Pyroblasts have some pretty useful text on them, even when we don't have Painter, which is obviously good for us. But we're not going to draw any this game. We drew 3 against the mono red deck, and we'll draw 0 against the blue deck. So we make the Soul Guide Lantern. That'll give us a little bit of wiggle room around the actual breakfast combo. But we still have to worry about the Nadu combo. That's going to take more mana and more time. So next time they could deploy the breakfast combo. So we do have to try and fight using Soul Guide Lantern if our opponent lets this as a Saga trigger resolve. Alright, Soul Guide Lantern in. We'll take out this Swords to Plowshares so they can't shuffle it back in with a Memory's Journey later. And then we can sit on this and make sure we don't get killed by Self Illusionist. But they're shooting for the Shuko next turn after this one. And if they just have the Nadu, then they just draw a million cards. And we're in some real trouble. So this coming along and tutoring for a Pithing Needle will be helpful. But our opponent might have a shot at going off before we get to do that. Okay, is it better to get this Fable running? I think it is. I think that is more impactful than a Construct Token here. Construct Tokens don't play into counter magic, but we can kind of do with some filtering to try and find some Red Blast or something, so I like the Fable here. Alright, I think we're going to go for this Fable, see if we can loot our way towards something that interacts with the Nadu, since that's what we're mostly worried about at this point of the game. Our opponent appears to be a little bit slow on the clock over there, so I'm not sure what's going on. Alright, so our opponent's turn, their Urza Saga is popping. They missed a land drop last turn, so hopefully they miss it this turn and don't just play a Nadu and kill us. There's a land. Playing the bird. Now, they might not hit anything too impressive, but if they just, you know, they get 4 cards. If some of those are land, they play another creature, they get another couple of cards. Let's say they find a Nomads, then all of a sudden they just get to draw their deck, pretty much. There is the Nomads, so if they flip over a white mana source, then they get even more. Alright. Force of Will, that's going to probably stop what we're up to. A Daze as well. Sure. And a Ponder. Okay. So that's their 4 cards. Now, this is a lot of nonsense to get through. They're putting the thing back on the Narcomoon so they can attack for 2 here. This is a lot of nonsense to get through. Now, they're going to have to go to discard. And they don't get to use the Shuko to draw cards next turn. And we get an uncountable Pithing Needle to shut off the Shuko. So, we can win this game. Is it going to be easy? Certainly not. But it is going to be possible. And I'll take that. If we're worried about our life total, we can drop an Ensnaring Bridge at some point. Discarded a Nomads over there. Does that mean they have another Nomads? Not sure how to feel about that one. So, I would like to do my drawing and discarding first, so that we know what we're doing with our Urza Saga, whether we're making construct or tapping it for mana. So I'd like to discard this mountain, and then would I like more mana, or would I like a tutor in a few turns' time? Is this game about what happens in a few turns' time? Not sure. We could just put this in the graveyard and then fish it out later. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is a pretty interesting amount of mana, isn't it? Right, I think we're going to ditch the Saga. Maybe that's wrong. Okay, so now what are we doing? If we make a construct, we can have 2 mana left, which doesn't really achieve anything unless we attack with this. We tap this. We can have 5 mana, which gives us like Dragon Engine plus Engineer. I think we are tapping this Urza Saga. Did they get rid of the Nomads because they have a second one, or did they get rid of the Nomads because they have the Shuko? Let's hope it's the latter and they're just relying on the Shuko. So, we're probably just going to counterspell this Goblin Engineer. I think we just have to live with that. Because if they daze the Phyrexian Dragon Engine, we don't care. I'd at least like them to have to use a force on this. So if we'd have drawn Karn with our filtering, we could have put the Pithing Needle on Nomads potentially. Alright, Ponder and Forcible. Obviously, we knew that there was a force coming our way, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes. Are we playing out this Ensnaring Bridge? We know they have a daze, so I don't think we do that. I think we play out this Dragon Engine. If they want to counterspell this, we don't care because this is better in our graveyard anyway. Just kind of like a free roll, and then we can play this around a daze next turn and hopefully have enough shields up. Alright, let's see how dead we are to our opponent's Nomads that they're going to play. We also can't F6 our opponent's turns because we do need to care about the graveyard if they go for that line. They did have a Nomads, that's not a surprise. I think we have to play around the thing that's on board, especially when they discarded one that we knew about. But our opponent didn't make a mistake, but we angled ourselves into a position where if they did make a mistake, we might be able to take advantage of it. I don't think we can win this game. Alright, they got free land. Ghost Vacuum, that's pretty good against our welders and things. Ponder, not the most important thing right now, but they get to draw so many cards here. Do I think we can win this game? I guess we keep going until we see the, I guess, Prismatic Ending is really good here. Because it can just blow up our Saga Lantern and then they can just combo off. But they don't have any counter magic over there. So they're just going to take our Phyrexian Dragon Engine straight away. And that's fine. But they don't have a counter spell that we know of. So maybe we can sit behind this Ensnaring Bridge. And this stops them combo killing us until they can draw their whole deck and play Thassa's Oracle. I guess they can draw Thassa's Oracle and then just mill themselves out with a Cephalid Illusionist. It's not looking good for us. Yep, so they're coming in for 5 in the air as well. So we do need this Ensnaring Bridge to sit on. Or sit behind, I should say. So our opponent gets to draw 6 cards in our turn. Surprised they didn't like try and ponder or do anything here. Because they could have pondered into like another creature. So our little Fable's going to flip. A Grindstone. That's interesting. Let's deploy this Grindstone. This is kind of bait here. If they have a force. Okay, let's pad our life total a little bit. Alright, so now they're going to draw a bunch of cards. I'm surprised they didn't do this in response to the Grindstone. So if you're going to do it anyway, you may as well just have maximum information about what you're doing. They probably get a Tropical Island here. Okay, just a Hedge Maze. It's basically a Tropical Island, right? So they just want to surveil and see what they can find. Right, I found a Force of Will. We're not dead to this attack, though. We're obviously in a pretty horrible position. I guess we can attack with this guy now. But then this would have to trade with this if they put the Shuko on it. Yeah, I don't want to trade my Reflection because we could maybe find something that could potentially get us out of this one. Okay, so have a Cephalid Illusionist. They just need to find the Thassa's Oracle and then they win the game. There's the Thassa's Oracle. So they have the win now. They can just mill themselves out. I'm going to respect our time and our opponent's intelligence. Okay, so what do we want here? Honestly, like our deck feels reasonably well set up for this. Like this isn't a big Ensnaring Bridge game. I don't mind having 1 to tutor for, but I think we can at least take 2 out. Our opponent's not like a super aggressive deck. That gets us a couple of Furies, which can maybe sweep out some of their little guys. I do like the Disruptor Flutes a bit here, but how do we fit them in is the question. I think we need all of our paintery type stuff. That feels very good here. Pyroblast, obviously you can hit a Nadu or a Cephalid Illusionist on the stack, which is nice. This shuts off Shuko and finds us some annoying things for our opponent to get through. Blood Moon, our opponent's mana base is really sketchy. Yeah, I don't know what we're supposed to take out here. I guess we could trim on like some of our combo stuff. Because we don't need to make our opponent's things blue for our Painted Servants to do the most they can. So we could put out a couple and have a couple of flutes there and 1 to get from the board. We could also trim on a Grindstone and have 3 painters if we think that's better. Maybe that's slightly better. Because we have more tutors for the Grindstone because we've got the Urza Sagas as well as the Engineers. So we'll try like this. No red mana. That's an easy mulligan. 1 red mana, but it comes in tapped. So this is also a mulligan. Yikes. I don't think we can keep a hand that looks like this. On to 5 again. I think that's the second time as League we've hit 5. This hand is really bad as well. Are we just... I guess we're all in on turn 1 Fable, right? So we get rid of this. We get rid of the Pyroblast. Okay. Now, Fable, if it resolves, will kind of fix a lot of our worries. Let's cast this. Please don't Force of Will me. If they have a Force of Will, they almost certainly fire it off here because we have nothing going on from that point onwards. Okay. So we've got a thing that's going to produce us a treasure every turn. We've got the ability to dig a little bit, but what are we going to find that's better than a Pyroblast when both of our opponent's win conditions are blue? Source of Plowshares on our Goblin Shaman. Yep, that's obviously a disaster. Do we need to cycle cards to find a land? Potentially. Ancient Tomb off the top, please. Non-Ancient Tomb off the top. Okay. Are we just cycling these? I think we are. Okay. We found a land at least. We can't do anything with this as a Saga apart from make a construct. Sorry, apart from tutor, not make a construct. That's the one thing we can't do with it. But we can go and get ourselves a Pithing Needle here and name Nomads and Core, which is the scarier of our opponent's combo pieces. Serenity. Well, like, what are we supposed to do? You mulligan to 5, and they just play a Serenity on us. Yikes. What do we do? Oh, this is so bad. Well, we get to play a Goblin Welder. What do we want to put into our graveyard here? What do we want to put into our graveyard? We could put in like a Lotus Petal so that we can get some more mana. That doesn't seem great for us. We could put in the Grindstone so that we have that later on, but then that's our only copy of Grindstone. Now the Pithing Needle, so we have that for later. I think it's the Lotus Petal, as sad as that is. Or maybe... No, I think it's the Pithing Needle, actually. We know it's going to die, but the hope here is that our Welder can do something in a bit. So we can't play this out because it's an enchantment. This destroys all artifacts and enchantments. So we're going to lose 3 permanents to Serenity when we're on a mull to 5, and we have to use 2 pieces of fast mana to get our first play out. This is unbelievably brutal. So we can lose all of these, but we at least can find an artifact and put this Pithing Needle in and hopefully stop our opponent from killing us. But they can just go Nomads, Sephirate Illusionist here, and we die. Brainstorm. So we're not dead this turn. That's something. I'll take it. Nomads. So we might be dead next turn, but if we find an artifact, we can shut this off at least. Well, that's an artifact that we can play. So a 1-drop artifact or... Okay. We have a Fury. We need to hope that our opponent doesn't just have either part of their combo here. I think we are stone cold dead here. They're probably going to go and get a Hedge Maze here. That gives them mana to cast Nadu. Also can give them a little bit of a surveil to see if they can find the card they need to win the game. They left the card on top, so presumably we are dead. And there's a Saga. They don't really need this. Another Nomads. Okay, are they doing this first just to have double Nomads in case we have some weird tricks? Yeah. You got this, opponent. Our deck just completely fell apart on us there. And their Serenity was huge. Alright, that was really rough. Let's go to round 4. What are we doing here? Turn 1, Saga. Turn 2, Blood Moon. Then we just have a Saga cranking out all the bits. That sounds pretty cool to me. Obviously, we'll need to find another land, but we've got time because this is not going to advance any further once we play the Blood Moon. So we're just going to have a Saga on 2 that can't be wastelanded underneath the Blood Moon. And then we just get to win the fair game if we have that. Now, if our opponent's doing unfair stuff, maybe we want this Saga to tick up and get us a hate piece. So playing it on turn 1 to get the hate piece or to enable our beating their fair plan is pretty good here. And there's a Saga from our opponent. Okay. Are they doing unfair or fair things? Manifold Key. They're doing unfair things. Okay. So this would be a great time to drop this Blood Moon. To stop our opponent from ever getting this Saga popping off. So, Great Furnace, Lotus Petal. We will need to find a land, but we can worry about that later. This will shut down our opponent's lands that give them a bunch of mana. So this will never advance. Their Urza's Tower, Planar Nexus, that sort of jazz is not going to tap for the mana they need it to, so they're not going to be able to just jam a Karn in our face super early doors. Now, if they play a Grim Monolith, then they can still do that. Okay, they have a Grim Monolith. Cool. Yeah. Like I said, this would be good against a fair plan. That's not what we're against here. Now, we can get a Pithing Needle from it if we lose our Blood Moon, but how are we going to lose our Blood Moon? We're not. Yep. The Grim Monolith just completely invalidating what we're doing here. Tezzeret Cruel Captain. Yep, that's a free spell because it just untaps a Grim Monolith straight away. They can also go and find whatever little bits and pieces they require off of it. Oh, they're minusing. What are they getting here? Another key? It's another key. So they're going to play this out and then they're going to make a 4-drop. Okay. This Mystic Forge deck is pretty darn strong. So they untap the Grim Monolith. They play the One Ring this turn. And then, like, what are we doing? This is Destroy, not Exile, so we can't blow up the One Ring even if we wanted to. We can blow up the Tezzeret. But if they've got a Karn here... Yeah, that shuts down... Yeah, we're just done here. Like, our opponents just played out a million things on turn 2. We got nothing. That was utterly savage. I think this is very much a Disruptor Flute matchup, so let's get those in. Now, there is an argument here to play the Furies, because the Furies can deal with Planeswalkers, and our opponent has a bunch of them. What we don't really need here is Ensnaring Bridges. Yes, they can do Urza Saga, but that's not really what we're caring about here. We don't need the Soul Guide Lantern. The Pyroblast, once we get our little Painted Servant up and running, that's going to be really good. I still like the Blood Moons. Stops our opponent having lands that tap for a whole bunch. Is Phyrexian Dragon Engineer a little bit slow? It's kind of a nice thing that we can shoot it for and kind of do our bits and pieces with. So maybe we do still need this. I like a thing that can blow up all of our opponent's permanents. That feels useful. Are we trimming a Painted Servant or are we trimming it? It's probably a Pyroblast, isn't it? let's be honest. Void Mirror. This is something we want. Do we want to fetch this with Karn? I don't think we do. I think we just want this in the main. So the way this is worded, whenever a player casts a spell, if no coloured mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So that means our opponent doesn't get to use their colourless mana spell to play their colourless spells, but we can use our coloured mana like mountains to play our colourless spells. The other card that I quite like here is, where did it go? The Damping Sphere. Let's have that over a Pyroblast as well. Or do we want it over a Painter? Like, it's nice to have these Pyroblasts, but they're not going to do anything unless we have a Painter. I think we're going to run with this. Like, once we've got Karn, that's already going to shut down a bunch of their stuff, so we're not going to need the Karn to go and find us another lock piece. We need lock pieces by the dozen. Okay, deck. Be good to me. We got some sideboard cards. Let's try this one out. So, Arena of Glory first, then we go Saga. We can play the Void Mirror. That's going to be pretty strong here. Means you have to be careful with how we cast this Pithing Needle. Okay, so we want to play this Lotus Petal out before we play out the Void Mirror. Otherwise, this would be countered because this is symmetrical. Not a common hate card, but I think it's very, very good against the Mystic Forge deck. Now, they can filter mana through their Planar Nexus, but if they don't have Planar Nexus, then all their spells will be countered at this point. So, pretty good. Urza's Workshop, so they can't cast any spells without them being countered. Good stuff. We play this out, we name blue. This doesn't impact the Void Mirror. It says if no coloured mana. These won't produce coloured mana because they're blue. So next turn we have the Grindstone coming off of the Saga and our opponent dies. Get the Grindstone, play the land, use our floating mana to mill our opponent so we don't have to lose a Lotus Petal for it. Have they got like an Emrakul in their deck? It's a thing they can cast, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. You don't normally see it in Mystic Forge decks, but there's been a little uptick in Painter this week. It's been putting up quite a few 5-0s in League, so maybe they can just play that as some tech. Alright, we tied the match. Void Mirror was a banger. This just completely hoses their entire deck. Alright, let's go in again. Hopefully we can draw our incredibly large Haymaker sideboard card. That'd be nice. The mana here is pretty sketchy, but we do have a turn 1 Karn. So, keep? Like, it's one of the very best cards that we can possibly play. They're going to play a key. They are. Right, let's play this one out. Let's play Lotus Petal. 1, 2, 3, 4. Minus this. What are we getting here? I think we're just getting a Liquimetal Coating. And then we can just blow up our opponent's lands from this point out. So this is the turn they have to do something good. Urza's Saga. That's pretty good. It's not as good as Liquimetal Coating blowing up your Urza's Saga, though. It's just going to be a Grim Monolith that doesn't work. Yeah, I think we've won this game. Some cool and interactive magic for you to enjoy. Let's deploy the Coating here. Let's turn this into an artifact. Let's plus on this and blow it up. I'll play out the City. Do I play out the City of Traitors? I don't think we do. I think we just hold it for now. Like, we could play a Disruptor Flute, but our opponent... I guess the one thing that can get us here is if they play Urza's Tower into their own Karn. Then things get weird. Manifold Key. Alright. If they don't play a land out this turn, they lose the game, I think. Alright. That should be lights out. Alright, our opponent's scooping it up. Yep. We didn't really do Painter things. We just happened to have some really good hate cards, and that's how we won this matchup. A little bit awkward. So we're 4 rounds in. We're 2-2, so pretty even. Let's see if we can turn that into a positive in the final round. This opening hand is fine. We'll keep it. I think our opponent might be the trophy leader, or they were last season. I can't remember. Alright. I believe they're on some sort of Nadu last time I played against them. Green Sun Zenith. Okay. How does our hand fare against a Nadu strategy, I wonder? Do we need to race towards doing something with this Saga? I don't think so. I think this is just play out the Welder. And then we can Pithing Needle something next turn. If they counter the Pithing Needle, we can get it back with the Welder as well. I think we're going to be Pithing Needling a... Okay, so it's a Nadu. So we need to Pithing Needle the Nomads in Core. What is more important to get up and running here? I think it's just Saga, play Pithing Needle, see if they counter it or not. Low key, I think Pithing Needle was actually one of my favourite cards if I think about it. Like, this is probably one of the cards I've cast most over the years. But I do really just like it as a as a card. It's a very simple effect. Alright, let's play this Lotus Petal out. Let's play out a Grindstone to get all our pieces down. And then we can pass. So they're going to have other things that they can maybe grab off of a Greenstone Zenith that can trigger a Nadu. So like Scythecat Cub or a Sylvan Safekeeper. Those are the ones you see. Sometimes Bristly Bill. Sometimes there's like a 1-mana elf where you can pay 1 green mana to give target creature trample. You see that in the Cradle builds. I think our opponent could be playing one of the Cradle builds. They could be playing the mid-range build that sometimes runs the Zenith. So hopefully this time we'll get a little bit more information and can work out what list our opponent is on. There is the Sylvan Safekeeper. That will allow them to get some Nadu triggers here. I think we were still right to get the Nomads done, because this comes at quite a cost. They have to sacrifice lands to get this to work. So I don't think they're going to be super into that. I'm not going to trade my Welder for a Dryad Arbor. I don't think that's worth doing. Delighted Halfling. Sure. Just gives them more mana, so they're more likely to pitch some stuff to the Sylvan Safekeeper. How do I feel about these cards? We can play a Karn. What does the Karn actually do for us? We can plus it. Doesn't really get us where we need to go. We can play this Ancient Tomb, crank out a Construct. I don't think Construct is necessarily how we win in this game. We can do both if we do some weird Welder shenanigans though. Because we can sacrifice the Petal and then Welder the Petal back in. That's pretty interesting. I think I'm going to get this Fable going. We can play around a daze. If this digs us towards the Painter's Servant, that can just win us the game. If our opponent has to pitch 2 cards for it, that's something at least. They are pitching 2 cards for it. And then we might be able to catch them in combat with this Urza Saga. I think our opponent is a pretty good Magic the Gathering player, so they're not going to fall into this trap. They're probably just going to tap the Nadu. Unless they actively want us to be sacrificing stuff with our Welder. So they might have like Greenstone Zenith for Keen-Eyed Curator. So this looks like another Greenstone Zenith. This is going to be Scythecat Cub, perhaps? There it is. So if they play a land here, they get a Nadu trigger and a cat trigger. Okay, so they only get 1 trigger. It's not a fetch land. That could have been worse. It's not great, but it could have been worse. So they get a Nadu trigger. They revealed a Brainstorm. That's obviously a pretty phenomenal Magic the Gathering card. I imagine they might as well fire it off now, I think. Like, you could hold it for another turn to try and get more cards, or you could do a couple of Nadu things to put more cards in your hand so you have more stuff to manipulate. There's different ways you could take that, but I assume our opponent knows what they're doing with their deck better than we do. So they should bash with the Nadu, not the Safekeeper. If they bash with the Safekeeper, we can attack with... we can put a Construct in. How do I think this game is going? Poorly. Our opponent doesn't have Counter Magic in hand, though. So if we draw a Painter, this is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. If we make a token right now, at the cost of our Grindstone, it becomes more awkward. I think we just go to our turn and don't make a Construct here. A Goblin Welder. What do we get with a Karn? What works for us? We can get Disruptor Flute. That doesn't really help us here. Temple Trap is 5 mana to play up a creature. That's a lot. Get Chainsaw, which doesn't kill the Nadu. The Sylvan Safekeeper does its thing. We don't have anything too exciting. We could go and get Disruptor Flute and put on Safekeeper. That's not actually the most exciting either. Ugh, I don't really like any of our options here. No, we're a long way off of... I guess we could... Could we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? So we could get the Ensnaring Bridge and play it around... we play around with our Lotus Petal shenanigans. That works. So then we just get a Lotus Petal here. Play this one out. 1, 2, 3, 4 mana. So in comes the Karn. And we minus the Karn. Go and get ourselves an Ensnaring Bridge. And then our opponent just tutors for their Outland Liberator and kills it most likely. But we'll see. So this is Ensnaring Bridge. Casting Ensnaring Bridge. This is secretly around a daze because of the Goblin Welder. And then we can get the last card out of our hand using Welder. Let's get back this Petal. So we know that's the last card in our hand, so we know this is resolving unless they want to sacrifice some stuff. And then we can cast this and just sit behind our Karn. And the plan here is draw a land, and then we can just put a Mycosynth Lattice into play, and then our opponent loses the game to Lattice. So this is the turn we need them to not have a removal spell for our Ensnaring Bridge. Grindstone Zenith X equals 3. Have they just got like Reclamation Sage? Are they just doing the maximum one they can? I don't think that's right. I guess no, because they have the Light Heart thing, they have the mana, right? So they're leaving out the mana here. So they go and get Outland Liberator if they have it in their main deck. They don't have it in their main deck. Okay, so they're getting the Endurance here. So the reason they're doing this is so that we can't get the mana to get the Lattice lock going. Are they going to start sacrificing lands to their Nadu yet? Apparently not. Okay. Ensnaring Bridge. There's nothing on our sideboard I want right this second for 1 mana. So we're just going to plus this. We'll target nothing. Okay. Whose top decks are going to be better here? We just need 2 mana. That's all we actually require to win this game. Our opponent needs, like, Green-Sun Zenith, possibly... Prismatic Ending doesn't really do it because we have 2 bridges now. If they brainstorm and there's nothing good there, they can be locked out for a few turns. Which would be really nice for us. Taking a long time on this brainstorm, which I don't know if that's good or bad for us. They can also start doing like Bounce Nadu with Caracas, replay Nadu. That's a plan that's available to them to just draw extra cards. Okay, so they finished their brainstorm and now they're doing the Nadu thing that we mentioned. They're also getting a free land off it because of how they've stacked it. Now, with this trigger on, they can then put something onto a guy. That gets them another Nadu trigger. So they're going to be able to see a lot of cards. I assume we're just playing out the Nadu again. I have to imagine they're going to fire off this Ponder as well. Once they get enough lands as well, they can start using Safekeeper, and it's going to be a little bit tricksy. But we could just draw like a City of Traitors, and then we just get to lock our opponent out of the game. Not a City of Traitors. This is a really awkward card to have in hand. So we could minus the Karn and get something, but that doesn't seem great here. I think we just have to plus the Karn on nothing. And then we play this Karn and see if this resolves. We don't really want it to resolve. We also don't want any cards in hand. So, not a great draw. Because this forces us to tap the Ancient Tomb as well. We're not even... Actually, no, we do keep this one because it has more loyalty, right? That's the newly controlled one. Okay. We just need to find the mana. Okay, they got a fetch land for Scythe card. Force of Will. That's very annoying if we're trying to resolve a Mycosynth Lattice. They found a blue card to go with their Force of Will. Must be nice for them. They can also just hard cast it with the mana they have available. Yep, they're casting a Ponder. Yep, they're doing the Caracas targeting the Nadu trick again. They got a Windswept Heath, so this is going to get them more looks. Like, I don't know if they have any way of breaking the Ensnaring Bridges, because surely they would have got it instead of the Endurance, if that was the case. Maybe they just have 2 Prismatic Endings they're digging towards. They can blow them both up. It's not going to be easy for us to win this game. We could end up just doing natural Grindstone plan. We can just find a Grindstone, play the Grindstone, mill them out a little bit. A Painter's Servant, you say? I will cast a Painter's Servant. Would you like to Force of Will this opponent? Or would you like to be able to pitch anything to Force of Will so they have 2 Force of Wills available instead of potentially only 1? Right, they are cracking their Windswept Heath. This is going to give them another trigger on their Nadu. And they're probably going to stack it with the Surveil on top. They can see what they're drawing before they get it. Just having the most information before they decide what cards they're pitching to Force of Will makes the most sense. What do they find? A Swords 2 Plowshares. They probably don't care about our Painter in that case. Do I name blue? I don't really want to name blue. I'm going to name red. And then I will plus the Karn on no targets. And we'll pass the turn. Proper grind you on this. Urza Saga would be a pretty good draw because then we get an uncounterable Grindstone and we can just naturally mill our opponent out. There is one of the Prismatic Endings they're looking for. They need another one though. I have double Prismatic Ending. I think we are pretty dead here. Haven't done the maths. We take 3. And then the cat has Trample anyway, so... Right, Green-Sun Zenith. We've already established they don't have a thing with Green-Sun Zenith that blows up an artifact. Because then they would have got it before. They have a very large Endurance. Why do they want their Endurance to be so large? Surely you want your Trampler to be the large one. Obviously, they know what they're doing. It's just trying to work out what information we can glean from them putting the counters on the Endurance. I can't be worried about flyers out of a Painter deck. Right, so they're going to Prismatic Ending away one of the Ensnaring Bridges. Sure. There's still one there, though. Do we have another one on the sideboard? Or we already got the sideboard one, didn't we? But we can go and get the one in exile here. And just have another Ensnaring Bridge. Now, that will force our opponent to force. We're doing the Nadu Caracas plan again. Another Green-Sun Zenith. So they can shoot it for everything they want, but is that going to make a difference? Replaying the Nadu. If they've got a second Dried Arbor, they can go and get a Dried Arbor and get a trigger. Another Delighted Halfling. Back over to us. A Pyroblast. Okay. -2 this Karn. Go and get this Ensnaring Bridge. Cast this Ensnaring Bridge. And then we'll Pyroblast the Force of Will here. I don't know if they're going to have enough Prismatic Endings to get through this. But the problem is if we can draw some 4-drops and we can't cast them because we're an Ancient Tomb, then we'll be in trouble. So we're both in situations where it kind of feels hopeless for both of us in some respect. And we just got to see who finds that little trace of hope first. They will deck first, but we don't know how many endurances they have. There's a Nomads that's shut off already. They could just Prismatic Ending this Needle and just draw the whole deck. Right, they got some more triggers because they keep finding lands on top when they're doing their Nadu thing, which then gives them another Scythecat Cub trigger. Delighted Halfling. An Uro, sure. They don't have many cards left in their deck, only 19. But if they've got another Endurance... Right, they're going for another Nadu trigger. They're getting another land. I don't know how many more Fetchwalls they're even going to have at this point. There's a Brainstorm, sure. They don't have like an abundance of blue cards, so it might be a case that they only get to cast one Force of Will here. Swords to Plowshares on the Goblin Welder, sure. So by countering the... Yeah, by killing the Goblin Welder, it means they can counter this and we can't bring it back. I'm going to counter target spell if it's blue, and that spell is going to be this Force of Will. Okay. So we're going to not have this second Ensnaring Bridge. But will our opponent have their second Prismatic Ending? I think they have 2 Prismatic Endings in their whole deck. That's pretty common for these sort of Nadu lists. Boseiju. Yep, that's us very dead. Okay. I'm going to bring in some Furies. I think we also probably want a Chainsaw. This isn't really a Saga Lantern matchup, although they do have Endurance, so that can kind of mess with things a bit. The Pyroblast are actively good here, so are the Blood Moons. Ensnaring Bridge is fine. I don't think we need this many Ensnaring Bridges. I like the Karn, but it is a little expensive, so maybe trim 1 Karn because it's not doing stuff on its own. And then we maybe trim a Painter or a Grindstone, one of the two. Have we got anything that we want here? Disruptor Flutes, some of those. So maybe we're getting rid of a couple of Painters, a Grindstone, and then we still need 1 more cut here. I really like the Pyroblast for obvious reasons. Where's the cut here? That's tough. Could be like a piece of fast mana. Try that. Sure. I think this one is reasonable. You can do Welder, Saga, get this Disruptor Flute going, and then just crank out a few lads to fight them with. That is a Noble Hierarch. Painter's Servant. Is that what we want to be doing right now? Oh, I just played the wrong land. Oh. That was a bit of a spew there. It does mean that we don't miss out on any constructs, though, by doing it this way. We could have attacked with the Welder. Scythecat Cub. I could play this Disruptor Flute naming Misty Rainforest. I don't think that's the correct thing to do here. Tundra, sure. Are they going to kill our Welder as well? Nomads in Core. Let's flash in the Flute. Karn. It's not really about Karn right now, is it? So we can make the Painter's Servant and force some interaction off of our opponent. I think that's what we're going to do here. I think we name blue and threaten the Pyroblast on anything. It does make their Force of Wills easier to cast. They can pitch lands and stuff to them. So next turn we can crank out a 3-3. And then it'll become a 5-5. Or we can just try and grind our opponent out. But they do have access to the Endurances in their deck. So we have to be a little bit wary of those. Swords to Plowshares on our poor, defenseless little Painter's Servant. He was just a little artist. We're just going to get punked by some Scythecat Cub beats. Possibly. There's a Nadu as well. Disgusting stuff over there. Okay, no, it's just a Greenstone Zenith for 2. Is it just another Scythecat Cub? Or are we just going to collect a roof? Huh. Well, well, well. I don't think we want this Nomads and Core to trade for our Welder here. So this is going up. We can make a construct. I think that's fine for now. We have a Pyroblast if something really gets wacky over there. So this is an answer for Nadu. It doesn't counter Nadu from a Greenstone Zenith though. But we get a 2-2, which then becomes a 4-4. So we can have 2 4-4s to put in front of the Scythecat Cub potentially. That does lead for a big blowout. We can also just sit behind an Ensnaring Bridge as well. Like the coward we are. Blue and white. Is this going to be a prismatic ending on our Disruptor Flute? It is indeed. That is disheartening. So the Nomads is up and running. We can't ever tap out this Pyroblast now. Because if they get an Nardu into play, they draw 10 cards and we lose the game. Well, they draw 10 cards, then they draw another 10 cards. Yep, Sidecat Cub being big. You are a live lad. Let's make a friend. It's just a 1-1 now. An Ensnaring Bridge. Is this what we're doing? It might be what we're doing here. I think we're Float Mana. Soulguide Lantern or Grindstone. Or Pithing Needle on Nomads. It's probably Pithing Needle on Nomads, isn't it? And we'll cast this Ensnaring Bridge. I will not Pyroblast. Will I Pyroblast a Force of Will here? Okay, we didn't have to make that decision. That's good. So they can attack with this Collector Roof if they want to. We can trade it for our Construct. I don't think they're going to want to do that. We have the key Pyroblast to deal with Nardu. Unless they just Greenstone it up and then start playing lands. That puts us in a bit of trouble. But our opponent's probably going to clock out here. We might be considering scooping and going to a game 3 at some point, just to make sure they can actually get the match won. It's not as if we've been trying to time our opponent out though. Like the first game, there was definitely lines that could bring us back into the game and win it for us. Even though it looked kind of hopeless. They would like to trade their Collector Roof for my Construct token. That is a bold strategy. This suggests to me they have instant speed removal for one of our things. I think we take this trade though, if it's being offered. Our creature's not attacking at the end of the day. We are very much in the turtle up mode, unless we can generate a huge selection of creatures. I think these Pyroblasts are pretty heavily telegraphed. I think we have to play another Ensnaring Bridge out, which means we can't Pyroblast now. Dismember on the Welder. Are they going to counterspell this as well? No. Okay. So the Sidecat Cub can't attack, but the Nomads can for 2. And then we hope they don't play a Nardu this turn. We can Pyroblast and kill the Nardu once it's in play, but that obviously goes a lot worse for us because they get to get cards off of it, either off of lands or off of our Pyroblast. So just let us untap opponent. Alright, here comes the Nardu around the Pyroblast that we didn't have an option to do anything about. Cool. Painter's Servant, you say. I think we have to start off with destroying this permanent that is blue. Enjoy your Nardu trigger, opponents. If it's a land, then they get another one. It's a Force of Vigor. Swords to Plowsharing, then Nardu. Get another trigger. So they might be looking for a green card here. So they're getting some more triggers. I don't think we need to go Pyroblast over the top. I think the situation is very poor for us. So these Nardu Zenith decks were one of the counters to the Mystic Forge decks at the Eternal Weekend last year. If we just had one more mana, we'd be okay here. So that guy goes away. They blow this up. They have 9 damage on board. So I guess we play this guy so we can chump block for a turn. Hate that one. This saves us just enough damage unless they have a bunch of lands. Force of Vigor blowing up our bridges. Yep. This is so that we can't name blue and then Simian Spirit Guide, Pyroblast, Force of Vigor. Alright, we're just dead. Alright, GG's opponents. That felt like an unwinnable mess for us. So we finished up with a 2-3, not a particularly standout record. So what do I think about Painter? Honestly, I think there's a reason why a lot of the Painter decks you see now are blue. Because the blue build gives you Force of Will, and there are so many scary things you have to interact with in the format that just having this little stop valve in your Force of Will makes a lot of sense. And obviously, the artifact package of Pinnacle Emissary and stuff is kind of busted, where you can make turn 1 Kappa Cannoneer sometimes. And that's just obviously a very disgusting thing to be doing to people. I do still like the red Painter list, and I'm obviously not an expert at it. We did showcase the Welder into Engineer Defiler someone out of the game line. That is really cool and can certainly get you a lot of juice to squeeze. I think what we were seeing a lot of the time was our hand was kind of slow and not really doing stuff. We'd have Welder, but we wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with it, so this card would end up being blank. Or we'd have a smattering of things. We'd have a Soulguide Lantern and a Pithing Needle. We don't know which of these is going to be useful in our opener. And then we've got a Karn, which is going to take a few turns to get to. We won one round relatively fair and square versus the red deck. It just didn't feel like they had the tools to beat us. But then the Mystic Forge deck we beat, we basically just beat because we had really powerful hate cards. So like the Painted Servant stuff we were doing didn't actually feel like it was the be all and end all of how our deck was functioning. I don't think it's a great spot for the old Painted Servant deck right now, which is sad. Like a lot of the scary things aren't necessarily blue. There are some, you know, Kaito and Tamiyo alongside Big Daddy Murktide Regent. So, you know, those are still around, they're still scary. But Entomb, Reanimate, this doesn't interact with it. Like all the Mystic Forge type stuff, this kind of doesn't do anything to. Eldrazi, which is, in my opinion, one of the best decks in the format, that doesn't get interacted by a Pyroblast either. There's a lot of sketchy stuff that doesn't necessarily work out well for us with how our cards line up. I think we're pretty good into the fair deck, so like if we were on like a fair, grindy, you know, like blue-back tempo, I imagine we're probably quite good into. But against some of the combo field, they're just faster than us, and if our hate pieces don't line up correctly, then we're in trouble. Now, when our hate pieces do line up correctly, we smash them down, as you saw. We had Karn and the Void Mirror. This is a card that you should have on your radar as a potential sideboard option. If you're struggling against Mystic Forge, bang in some Void Mirrors, and these will certainly help you out. Alright, we are done for today. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you want to see my content early for just $1 a month, you can become a YouTube member and get to see my content early. The more of you that do that, the better. I've kept it cheap to try and incentivize as many of you as I can. Alright, plugs over and done with. Have a lovely day and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbo Depths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.